attorney Mark O'Mara is representing Mr. Zimmerman. Mr. O'Mara, his name will become household soon enough. He joins us by phone from Florida. Mr. O'Mara, how is George Zimmerman doing tonight?
He's tired and stressed and frustrated, but I think there's at least some benefit to knowing that there's a process now in place so we know what the next few steps are.
Let me ask you a question. I know you defend a lot of unpopular types, I imagine. Was this a case that you had to really think long and hard about to take? Were you afraid for the safety? I talked to Mark Garagos last night, and he said at times he's been afraid for his family when he's taken very unpopular cases or had horrible things actually happen as a result of those cases. Did you have any of those kinds of concerns?
Yeah, you can't be ignorant of it. I mean, there is that concern out there because there's been a groundswell of the way the case was handled, and the focus went against Mr. Zimmerman. And, of course, when you add that there are concerns over whether or not there were racial implications to it, it makes it that much more of an emotional event. But quite honestly, I'm hoping that the community, now that the process is moving forward, now that arrest has been made, that they will believe that let us give it our time, let us work through it, and the proper result will come, and that they'll both trust the system again. They may have had some concerns over the system, but I'm hoping they're going to trust it from this point forward.
Well, I don't think people are going to. I think, all the research shows that African Americans have a disproportionate distrust of the system, and this whole experience has borne that out for them. It's reinforced all that. Are you sympathetic to African Americans that feel that way?
I understand the concerns, but, what I do is represent people in a criminal case, and that focus is now on what Mr. Zimmerman did that day. Did he do something wrong? How it happened? So the racial component doesn't really play into that for my goal and my purpose.
Although looking at the state of Florida's affidavit of probable cause, there were some things that kind of smack of potentially racially charged material. Let's face it.
I would agree that the affidavit makes some reference to that.
And finally, what is George's mindset tonight? I mean, his previous attorneys talked about post-traumatic stress disorder. I frankly was stunned by their behavior. I don't know if you want to comment on that or not, but they're saying specifically that obviously he's been involved in an altercation and somebody's dead. That causes an acute stress reaction. But take us a little bit inside how he feels tonight. What is he thinking other than frustrated and tired? Looking at his pictures, by the way, Mr. Mara, he's blinking and his eyes are moving. He's very anxious. I mean, he is clearly and reasonably terribly anxious.
And that's exactly right. He's incredibly stressed right now. He's facing a secondary murder charge. That in of itself would be very stressful without the enormous focus that this case has. And, of course, he's been in virtual isolation for several weeks, and he has suffered through the event where someone died in an altercation with him. So there's a lot going on with him, but I do think that he is capable of assisting me, certainly in the defense. I've had good conversations with him and going to continue to. It's just a very stressful time.
I've heard you say you want him to get out on bond so he can help you with the defense. I assume that's one of your motivations, one of your priorities right now. But as far as this virtual isolation goes, was that because of his own safety, or was he on his way out of the state?
No. I think that he was concerned because there was a groundswell against him, and he was fearful of that. I don't think that anyone would have thought that Mr. Zimmerman could have walked down a street in Sanford or Central Florida or Florida and not at least run into concerns and do that for 6 or 8 weeks, and it's going to have some effect.
And I have one last question. Are you, or he more importantly, afraid he's going to jail for life?
If I was charged with secondary murder, I would be afraid that I might go to jail for life because that is a possibility in this case.
It's a possibility. Does he talk about that?
We haven't discussed the facts of the case. We haven't discussed the reality of the potential sentences and how that may change over time. But, no, we haven't really got into any of that.
Given that 95% of these criminal cases are negotiated down, is that going to be a priority short term?
The percentage is quite lesser than that with murder cases, but I always keep all options open. Once we start finding out more about the case and once we can craft our response to the state's situation, not necessarily to the media, but to the state, and maybe through motions that I think will then open up, or at least keep open, the possibilities of resolving this short of trial.
Mr. O'Mara, I thank you for joining us, and I hope you'll come back and, as this thing moves along, and help us understand what you're thinking, what Mr. Zimmerman is feeling, and what your plans are. So thank you again.